My older daughter tried to force me to disown her sister for stealing her crush, but I uncovered the truth and made her pay the price she deserved. I'm here to ask if I was the asshole for refusing to meddle in my daughter's fight. I have two daughters who have an age gap of 4 years. My elder daughter, whom I'll refer to as Serena, is 29. My younger daughter, who got married recently, I'll call Nina. These are not their real names, of course. Nina and Serena stopped speaking for some reason, and it's been 5 years since they last spoke. They had some big fights during the holidays 5 years ago, but we never found out what exactly the fight was about, and they still haven't told us anything about it. My wife and I stopped asking after the first couple of weeks and just accepted that they wouldn't talk to each other anymore. They would attend family events and come back home for the holidays but wouldn't speak to each other or even look at one another. For the last 3 years, Serena hasn't been able to make it back home for anything because she received a job offer in Siberia for research, which she'd taken up. She didn't come back home for 3 years and would only FaceTime us because she said it was too tiring to travel back and forth. That's why she was never able to meet Nina's boyfriend, now her husband, whom she introduced to us 3 years ago. Nina's husband, Matt, went to high school with Serena, and they were classmates. My wife and I became quite fond of him quickly. He was well-spoken, educated, and very ambitious, so we thought he was the perfect man for our daughter since they shared a lot of the same qualities. In fact, they'd even met at work because they happened to be working in the same company and in the same department. They'd recognized each other from school and had bonded over that at first, which then became a proper relationship. Serena didn't know about any of this because we kept our children's lives separate. We didn't talk to Serena about Nina and vice versa because it was clear that they couldn't care less about one another. However, I did receive an unexpected call from Serena about Nina a couple of weeks ago. She was pretty hysterical while talking and even started the conversation by accusing me of being heartless and playing favorites. After she calmed down, she told me that she'd had the biggest crush on Matt in high school. Apparently, she believed that Matt was only doing this as a way to get through to her because they'd lost touch after high school. I don't know how she'd found out about the wedding, probably through some friends from school since Nina and Serena had blocked each other on social media, but they did have a couple of common friends since they'd gone to the same high school. She said that she couldn't let this wedding take place because she knew that Matt and she were meant to be, and Nina was just trying to steal him from her. She wanted me to punish Nina and make this right by disowning her unless she let Matt go. I thought she was kidding because nobody can imagine their own kids saying stuff like this, but unfortunately, she was quite serious about it. I told her that she'd lost her mind and that I wasn't going to do anything of the sort. She went back to accusing me of playing favorites with her and her sister and even said that I'd always taken Nina's side over hers. That was not true, and she was just making that up to play the victim. At the time, I told her that she could only talk when she wasn't being hysterical and crazy, and then I disconnected the call. I didn't tell anyone about that phone call that day because Nina was happy, Matt seemed happy, and so did my wife. I was pretty sure Serena wouldn't be able to do anything because she was in Siberia at the time. I kept it quiet because I didn't want any of them to get worried about this without reason. Serena texted me about it 2 days after the phone call and said that I had to disown her sister, or she'd be forced to take matters into her own hands. I said that I knew she was bluffing and warned her that if she tried to do anything funny, I'd have her disinherited and thrown in jail. I believed that was enough, and after that, Serena didn't call or text me either, so I assumed it scared her off. 3 days ago, Nina got married, but unfortunately, Serena managed to have their ceremony delayed. She'd planned to get it cancelled altogether, but that didn't happen, luckily, because my wife and I had reached the venue just in the nick of time. The location where Nina was getting married was a significant distance away from our house. We'd planned on spending the night before the wedding in the hotel nearby, like everyone else, but unfortunately, we couldn't leave our dogs alone at home. We have 2 senior German shepherds, but the dog sitter who usually takes care of them when we're away had fractured her ankle and wouldn't be able to make it. Our neighbor said that he'd take care of our dogs, but he was going away for a business trip that week and would return only on the morning of the wedding. We didn't trust our dogs with anyone else, and Nina didn't want us to leave the dogs with some new sitter either. So, we decided that my wife and I would spend the night before the wedding at home, and then the next morning, we'd hand over our dogs to our neighbor as soon as he returned and head over to the venue for the wedding. Luckily, our neighbor returned and took the dogs by 8, and we left for the venue. Because we left a little too early, we were the first people to reach the place. We reached it around 10, but by then, most of the decoration outside the wedding hall had already been completed. Since the wedding was supposed to start at 11, we expected the inside to be just as beautiful as the outside. Unfortunately, the first thing we saw was graffiti that read "Boyfriend Stealer" in bold red letters that had been painted on the wall behind the stage where Nina and Matt were supposed to exchange their vows. My wife and I were shocked, and I instantly knew that this had been Serena's work. I rushed to the wall, and when I realized that it was still fresh and reeked of the metallic spray paint smell, I told my wife that Serena couldn't be too far off, and I was going to call the cops. She stopped me and said that it was more important to fix whatever had happened than go after whoever was responsible for it, which made sense. So, we decided to do something about this before Nina arrived. I asked her to call someone to get this fixed before the guests started arriving, and if they did, I'd stall them so they wouldn't go in and see that written on the wall. The goal was to make sure that Nina didn't find out about any of this until after everything was over. I didn't even call the police or anything, which I now think might not have been the best idea. The venue, unfortunately, was separate from the hotel and had its own security, but the guy responsible for it hadn't arrived with his team yet and was still stuck in traffic, which is why Serena had been able to get in at all. It was just bad timing for her. My wife and I had been dealing with a graffiti situation and speaking to the hotel staff by 10:15. My wife had thankfully been able to contact some of the employees at the hotel, who were kind enough to arrange a white screen to put up in front of the spray-painted wall. They usually had that for conferences but lent it to us for the event when they found out what had happened, which was very nice of them. The hotel wasn't too far away, so they were able to bring the screen to the venue and mount it on the stage quickly enough. Thankfully, it covered the graffiti completely, but it did look a little bit odd. The staff members who had brought it over even went to the extent of writing Nina and Matt with a bunch of hearts on it so it wouldn't look oddly empty. Once that was sorted out, we could finally breathe a sigh of relief because now at least Nina wouldn't have anything to worry about before the ceremony. Soon enough, the security team arrived as well, and we knew that Serena wouldn't be able to get in even if she tried to enter after this. At around 10:30, the first guests started trickling in, and because the situation was fixed, we didn't have anything to worry about. Nina soon arrived, and we had the first look and everything. Then I walked her down the aisle, and while she'd been a little surprised to see the screen behind the stage, she didn't mention it or ask about it, and the ceremony took place without a hitch. It was only afterward that she questioned me, and I finally told them all the truth after the reception. Everyone headed to the hotel, and from there, we'd all go back home the next day. At the hotel, Nina and Matt came to our room to ask why there had been a screen behind the stage and why there had been such a strong smell of spray paint coming from it. Until then, I hadn't told anyone about Serena, not even my wife, but I finally spilled all the beans on what had happened. Once I was done telling them, I realized that Nina and Matt were thankful for what I'd done. Unfortunately, my wife was furious with me. Nina and Matt thanked me for making sure Serena didn't ruin the ceremony or mess with their mental state before it in any way, which had clearly been her intention. They then said that they'd explain everything about the situation once they returned from their honeymoon because they wanted to enjoy these few days. I was all right with that, and once they left my wife and me alone in the hotel room, I asked her what she wanted to do about Serena. She then put me on blast and said that what I had done had been irresponsible and stupid and that I should have known better. I didn't understand why she was so pissed off when everything had worked out well and asked her why she was so upset. She told me that I have a savior complex. She thinks that I should have warned Nina and Matt and even her as soon as I received the first phone call or at least when I received the next text from Serena because it could have just as easily been something worse than just spray painting Nina's wedding venue. My wife started saying that Serena could have easily tried to harm Nina or Matt in other ways and that it should have occurred to me to tell them about it and make them alert instead of trying to hide it all just to protect them. I thought that was an overreaction because it wasn't as if Serena was a criminal. She was just jealous and maybe a little crazy at the moment, but I didn't think she was really going to hurt Nina or Matt physically. My wife kept arguing with me that she could have, and that it was my need to constantly act like I was doing everything for the best and being the savior in every situation that had put them in this predicament. Had I warned them at the time of the phone call, Serena probably wouldn't even have been able to get into the venue at all. 3 days ago, my wife and I found ourselves in a heated disagreement that left us barely speaking. For the record, I don't have any deep-seated issues with her, but she's been incredibly upset with me, and I've been racking my brain trying to understand why. I considered reaching out to our daughter Nina to help mediate and explain that my actions were well-intentioned, but she and her new husband, Matt, are currently on their honeymoon in Greece following their beautiful wedding. They won't be back for another 4 days, and I didn't want to interrupt their special time with our family drama. Meanwhile, I'm desperate to resolve this tension with my wife. 4 days of this cold distance feels unbearable, and I need clarity on whether I was wrong in this situation and if an apology is warranted. 2 days after my initial plea for advice, I took the collective wisdom from online discussions to heart. Many suggested that my wife's frustration might stem from more than just the recent incident at Nina's wedding, where I stepped in to handle a situation involving our other daughter, Serena. So, last evening, I approached my wife, hoping to bridge the gap. She seemed slightly more receptive, her mood softened by time. As we talked, the truth unraveled, and it became clear that the issue was far deeper than I'd assumed. The wedding incident wasn't the sole source of her frustration. Instead, she pointed to a recurring pattern in my behavior, one where I consistently try to play the hero, shielding others from discomfort or conflict, often at the expense of honesty or respect for their choices. One painful example she brought up was from 5 years ago, when Nina and Serena had a falling out that fractured their relationship. In an attempt to mend their bond, I once resorted to deception, inviting both daughters to dinner without informing either that the other would be there. The result was disastrous. When Serena arrived and saw Nina, she stormed out, furious, declaring she couldn't bear to be in the same room as her sister. She warned me never to manipulate her like that again, threatening to cut off contact entirely if I did. My wife, reflecting on that moment, explained that my actions were misguided. Both daughters were adults who had made their own decisions to distance themselves, and my attempt to force reconciliation disregarded their boundaries. She admitted she hadn't spoken up at the time, hoping I'd eventually recognize this tendency in myself and change. But as she listed other instances, moments where I'd stepped in to fix things for others, I began to see the pattern clearly. This habit of mine, this need to protect everyone's feelings, wasn't as noble as I'd thought. It often created more harm than good. The wedding incident with Serena was another misstep. I learned something about Serena's feelings toward the event, something that could have disrupted Nina and Matt's day. Instead of being upfront with them, I chose to handle it quietly, thinking I was sparing them distress. My wife pointed out that this was yet another case of me overstepping, assuming I knew best how to manage everyone's emotions. Reflecting on her words, I realized she was right. I should have been transparent with Nina and Matt, trusting them to handle the information as they saw fit. So, I offered her a heartfelt apology, acknowledging my mistake and committing to work on this part of myself. I also plan to apologize to Nina and Matt when they return from their trip, owning up to my tendency to overmanage situations that aren't mine to control. As for Serena, I'm uncertain about her current whereabouts or intentions. On the day of the wedding, I chose not to involve the police, despite what unfolded, because I wanted to protect Nina's special day from being overshadowed by drama. In hindsight, that might have been another misjudgment driven by my need to shield others. Serena has since blocked me, leaving me unable to reach out or check on her. I suspect one of Nina's friends might have inadvertently shared the wedding's location with Serena, but thankfully, no one outside our immediate circle knew that Nina and Matt were departing for their honeymoon directly from the hotel. This gives me some comfort that Serena won't be able to track them down in Greece. For now, my wife and I are on better terms, our conversation having cleared the air. I'm committed to changing this part of myself, recognizing that my instinct to save everyone often undermines their autonomy. It's a hard lesson, but one I'm determined to learn from as I move forward. Hi people, Nina and Matt just returned from their honeymoon 2 days back, and this morning they visited me and my wife to talk about something that happened at the wedding and before it. We finally found out the cause of the big fight between Nina and Serena, and I can understand why they didn't want us to find out until now. It's not very nice for a parent to hear things like these from their own daughters. 5 years ago, around the time of their fight, Nina had been telling her sister about some guy that she'd gone out on a date with. This was quite some time before she met Matt. When she showed her sister a picture of the guy, Serena flipped out on her because apparently that guy had also matched with her. They found out that this particular guy had been two-timing Serena, as she said she'd been seeing him for a couple of months. Instead of getting mad at her supposed boyfriend at the time, Serena got mad at Nina and accused her of always sleeping around and stealing her guys. Nina explained that this had happened earlier too when one of Serena's boyfriends had expressed that he found her more attractive. Nina had never flirted with that guy, and it was very creepy for her because she was 18 at the time, and Serena's boyfriend was in his early 20s. Still, Serena had blamed Nina for it. They'd made up after that first fight, but this time, Nina couldn't look past the sleeping around comment. Things got really nasty and vicious in that particular fight between them, so much so that they decided never to speak again. And here we all were. My wife and I were both really disappointed and uncomfortable with the things that we were told and felt that maybe we'd failed in raising our daughters, but things were about to get much worse. Nina told me that Serena had been continuously harassing her online while she was in Greece because Serena couldn't find her in real life. She sent Nina a text saying that she'd permanently moved back here just to make sure she got Matt back. Now, Nina was planning on getting a restraining order and changing her phone number too so Serena wouldn't be able to find her. They'd only kept this on hold because Nina had been trying to enjoy her honeymoon, but now that they were back, they were going to file for a protective order against Serena because clearly, she'd snapped and gone crazy. It was very emotional for my wife and me to come to terms with the fact that our daughter had turned out to be so psycho and downright evil, but there was nothing we could do to help the situation now. The revelation of Serena's disturbing behavior left my wife utterly devastated, despite her having braced for the possibility. Confirming the truth was a crushing blow. shattering our hearts as parents. Nina, ever compassionate, tried to comfort us, insisting we were exemplary parents and that Serena's actions weren't our fault. Yet, we couldn't help but agonize over what we might have done differently to steer her away from this path. Matt shared that he had no prior connection with Serena, not even in high school, and was baffled by her delusional belief that he harbored feelings for her. He dismissed her fixation as irrational and foolish, emphasizing that her behavior had no bearing on us. He also revealed that Serena always exuded an unsettling, eerie presence, even back in their school days, which caught us off guard. We had always believed Serena was popular and well-liked, but Nina and Matt corrected this misconception. Far from being admired, she was a loner, her abrasive temper and poor attitude alienating others. Her birthday parties, which we thought were evidence of her social circle, were a facade. Matt and Nina explained that the crowds at our house were lured by the promise of free alcohol, not friendship. Every year, Serena invited scores of people, and those seeking to get drunk would gather in our backyard. Trusting her, we'd leave the house for her celebrations, thinking we were giving her space to enjoy with friends. In hindsight, this was a grave mistake, as she exploited our trust to orchestrate these deceptive gatherings. Learning that our eldest daughter manipulated her peers with alcohol to feign popularity was a gut-wrenching moment. It painted a picture of a deeply troubled individual, far from the daughter we thought we knew. The realization was agonizing, but it brought clarity. Thankfully, Nina and Matt's decision to secure a restraining order against Serena offers reassurance that they'll be protected from her erratic behavior. We're now focused on healing from this betrayal while supporting Nina and Matt, grateful for the legal measures ensuring their safety. Our family has been through a harrowing ordeal recently, with Nina and Matt securing a restraining order against Serena. It was chilling to learn that Serena had been living just a few blocks from Nina's home, secretly stalking her without Nina's knowledge. The depth of Serena's disturbing behavior was shocking, but the priority now is that Nina and Matt are safe, which brings immense relief to us as parents. Fortunately, Nina had already ended her lease a couple of weeks ago and moved in with Matt, narrowly escaping further danger. With the police's assistance, locating Serena was straightforward, and her malicious intentions were easily proven. Her erratic behavior during the court hearings only solidified the case against her, and she was ordered to cover the damages she caused to Nina and Matt's wedding venue. In light of her actions, my wife and I made the painful decision to disinherit Serena entirely, revising our will to exclude her from our estate and finances. The only exception is a diamond bracelet my mother bequeathed to both daughters, to be inherited after my passing. It didn't feel right to override my mother's wishes, so we left that unchanged, but otherwise, Serena will receive nothing. My wife and I built a thriving business over many years before retiring 2 years ago, having saved enough to live comfortably. Neither daughter wanted to take over the company, so we entrusted it to my loyal assistant. Originally, we planned to divide the company shares between Nina and Serena, but now they will go solely to Nina and Matt. We've chosen not to inform Serena of these changes yet, as her reaction would likely be volatile, and there's no need for her to know until the will is executed. While she could contest it after we're gone, we doubt any court would sympathize with her, given her deplorable behavior toward us. This decision, though difficult, feels necessary to protect our family's legacy and ensure Nina's future security. The emotional toll of cutting ties with Serena has been heavy, but her actions left us no choice. We're focusing now on supporting Nina and Matt as they move forward, grateful they're out of harm's way. The legal measures in place and our revised estate plans give us peace of mind, knowing we've done what's best for our family's well-being. She's cut me off entirely and my wife too, so we don't think we're in any danger from her, but at the same time, we've still increased the security measures around our home and are much more alert. We don't have cause to worry yet, though, since she's shown no interest in talking to us. If she does say anything, though, I'll make sure that I go to the cops first because right now there's no telling what she might do.